Hey, and welcome to First Bite, our Detroit Lions midweek podcast, our preview podcast, where we talk about the upcoming game. And this is a big one. Training camp is over. Preseason game 3, the finale this year. Roster spots on the line, and we're going to get into it, talk about every position, all the players that need to play up big on Friday night. But before we get into all of that, my name is Jeremy Reisman. I am the editor-in-chief over at Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online on Twitter, and with me, as always, for First Bite is Ryan Matthews, our senior editor at Ryan_POD. Ryan, we're almost there, man.
We are almost there, and we may be sunburnt, we may be tired, but we have made it through one of the most sweltering, hot, just it seems like we need an oasis, and maybe preseason game 3 can provide us with an oasis in what in a preseason that has mostly been a mirage, I feel like.
Yeah. And you know what? I think what the true oasis is going to be is that rather than there just being this mad scramble of cuts after the last preseason game, we're actually going to have a couple days to think it over. And we don't really know how the coaches are going to use it, but normally you get the preseason game, which is either Thursday or Friday night. The cuts start coming on Saturday and it used to be the game was on Thursday, cuts are on Friday and Saturday, practice squad on Sunday. Now the cuts don't have to come until Tuesday. So Lions, everyone's going to have a full weekend to think it over. Players are going to have their phones by their side for 96 hours or whatever it is, and so will the media really. But let's talk about the preseason game because players have one more opportunity really to make an impression on coaches. And if you look at this Lions team, I think there's a lot up for grabs. I know Dan Campbell said earlier in the week he thinks about 80% of the roster is set, and that final 20% still up for grabs. I almost think it might be more than that, but let's we'll start with the offense here. Might as well start at quarterback here because based on practice today, kind of looks like David Blau might get the first team reps on Friday, and obviously that means Tim Boyle has dropped down at least this week. The question here is there a roster spot on the line? If so, does that mean Tim Boyle's in danger?
We speculated about this, going back all the way to preseason game 1 in terms of how much is that QB2 going to play, and then after that first preseason game, it was okay. Well, now are the two going to flip? Is David Blau going to get a chance to run with the twos? And that didn't turn out to be the case, but now it seems like it could be the case where David Blau gets a chance to run with the quote unquote ones, because it doesn't seem as though the Lions are going to play a lot of their starters in this game to close out the preseason. So I don't think so, Jeremy. I think that when it comes to the quarterback position, I think that the Lions are going to keep all three guys. I think I would be rather surprised if they didn't keep all three. And I know Dan Campbell made comments along the lines, to paraphrase him, we'll keep three quarterbacks if there are three quarterbacks worth keeping.
Yep.
I I think that they're just going to do a safe thing and they're going to go with all three of these guys. Tim Boyle was QB2 for long enough. I don't think that he necessarily did enough damage to hurt his stock. I think in the two games that he played, I think that that first preseason game, you look at his box score, and if you do box score hunting, Tim Boyle has had a pretty bad
Right.
preseason, hasn't he?
Yeah.
But I think it can almost be said decidedly that preseason game 1, not so much his fault. He was under duress an awful lot of the time behind that second string offensive line. They played a little bit better in preseason game 2. However, Tim Boyle did not. So, but I don't know. Are you feeling like the team keeps all three of these guys?
Yeah, I've been riding that train for a while, and I don't think I'm going to budge from it. But I do still think that there's something potentially still on the line for these quarterbacks, right? Like I think the backup job is still potentially on the line, regardless
Right.
of
I
whether they
agree.
keep a second or a third string guy as well. So, it should be a big night for Tim Boyle. Like it's I think a lot's on the line, and I do think there's an opportunity for him to lose a roster spot. He'd have to be just as bad as he was last week, maybe even more so. But yeah, I think there's a little bit on the line here. But yeah, because of COVID protocols, because you know this team. I mean, I think you can look at the Jordan Teamu thing a little bit of just like how serious they are about these two guys. Like they didn't even give that guy a shot. He was simply just brought in because they needed a guy potentially if one of those guys is injuries lingered into the preseason game. It didn't, so they barely even gave the dude a shot. So I think they like these two guys a lot. And I know, the public's perception of Tim Boyle's a lot worse than probably mine since I see him every day. And you guys have seen him with, 1.5 pretty bad performances. So I think they're going to keep 3, but I do think there's potentially an opportunity for one of those spots to slip away from one of those guys.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Like the pecking order of QB2 and QB3 can be decided, but I think ultimately they end up keeping 3 guys. I'd be pretty surprised if they don't keep all 3.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the running back position. As you noted in your camp observations, was it yesterday that DeAndre Swift comes back to practice,
Yep.
and the ring rust that maybe a lot of us were expecting to see on Swift because of Dan Campbell's comments earlier in the week were not really founded. Like
Yeah.
it looks like that guy is just like ready to go. And maybe Dan Campbell knows better than we do in terms of
Sure.
whether or not he's all the way up to to football speed. But he looks ostensibly he looks like a guy who is ready for week 1.
Yeah.
Would you say?
I would think so, and even more promising, he basically got a full workload today as well. And so when you're coming back from an injury, you do one full day and you're able to come back the next day. That's a really good sign. So I don't know if that's Dan Campbell playing some games with DeAndre Swift, like saying you got to get your butt in gear. But it was interesting to hear basically the assistant head coach, the running backs coach, Deuce Staley, say the exact same thing today after practice. So I think they're just kind of lighting a fire under him, but we're almost certainly not going to see him on Friday. We're definitely, I guess we're probably not going to see Jamal Williams either, which means we've got, a 4-man race for RB3, and I think it's closer than some people give it credit for. Like, I think most of us, including myself, are penciling Jamar Jefferson in the 7th-round pick. But in terms of guys making plays, Godwin Igwebuike made some plays last week. He scored a touchdown. Dedrick Mills has made a few plays. And then obviously Craig Reynolds, who is now forever going to be known as Netflix, as Deuce Staley called him, because that's what he was doing when they signed him. He was watching Netflix. So, I mean, I think this has the potential to be one of the more exciting battles to watch on Friday night, because I think all 4 of these guys are capable of making plays. And maybe this isn't the most exciting part of this matchup, but I think special teams could be the thing that tips the scales.
Yeah, that could definitely come into play. The coaching staff has talked about how important that is throughout camp. I'm interested whether or not, to kind of piggyback off of our quarterback discussion, if they do go with 2 quarterbacks, if they would feel inclined to keep 4 running backs.
Yeah.
Or maybe, just wherever they find an extra roster spot, where we're kind of maybe penciling in an extra guy, if they shave that off and talk themselves into keeping 4 running backs. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think, if you want to say 4 running backs and one of them being Jason Kabinda as the fullback, he seems like he's an absolute roster lock at this point.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that 3rd spot is definitely up for grabs. And, we talked about it in terms of Jamar Jefferson. Yeah, 7th-round draft pick essentially is a glorified UDFA, somebody who you draft.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily entitle him to keys to the kingdom. So, and with the way that Craig Reynolds has played, with the way that Dedrick Mills has played, you have to think that this is going to maybe tip the scales. This is definitely gonna have a huge impact when it comes to cuts.
And what's fascinating to me is, if you're the head coach, what order do you bring these guys out in? Because you really want to test all of them kind of as much as you can on an equal field, but it's not how the preseason works. You're in the first quarter, you're seeing a whole lot of different competition than you are in the fourth quarter. And I think a lot of us are itching to see Craig Reynolds in the first or second quarter, and the Colts are probably not playing any starters on Friday either. So it's not like Craig Reynolds is going to get an opportunity to go up against, a true NFL defense. But I think, considering he's been fourth quarter all preseason, maybe you still kind of sneak him into that first quarter. But I'm not sure that's how the Lions are going to play it. I'm very fascinated to see what they end up doing there.
Yeah. I mean, they could do something where it's series by series. They could, do it quarter by quarter. Who knows? But yeah, that is definitely going to be one of the more intriguing things to keep an eye on, in addition to wide receiver battle.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe the biggest one, because Dan Campbell keeps mentioning it. Two press conferences in a row, he's like, listen, that wide receiver battle is wide open. And so here's what we know. We know Tyrell Williams is a lock. We know Amon-Ra St. Brown is a lock. We know Khalif Raymond is a lock. I think that's all we really truly know. Like I'm inclined to put Quintez Cephas close to that, but I'm not doing it because I just don't know. Like a lot of these guys aren't making plays on a daily basis. Quintez Cephas is the closest, but he's not there.
I was going to ask you, do you feel that Quintez Cephas is closer than Brashad Perryman?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. And Brashad Perriman, again, like...
Which is shocking.
Yeah.
We came into camp and we said Brashad Perryman is wide receiver number 2.
And I feel like this final week of camp was a huge opportunity for him because there was no Tyrell Williams. He's been out. Mm-hmm. And so without him, you're getting some first-team reps in there, and you're getting an opportunity to show, and you haven't. So... I mean, the name that's on everyone's lips is Tom Kennedy and what the Lions do with him. And, I wrote an article on it. I've gone on tweet rants about it. It's a really tough situation. The guy has been the most consistent guy making plays in camp, period. More than really any receiver. But he's repping with second and third teams. But he's still probably the second or third best slot receiver. But he's also the second or third best punt returner. So if you keep him on the roster as wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6, what are you actually going to get out of him? Because it seems to me like you're going to keep that guy inactive almost every week, which is not worth the roster spot. Like, obviously you have to keep some guys inactive, but I don't see this guy jumping into the playing field unless 2 guys go down. And so that doesn't seem like it's worthy of a roster spot unless they can find something else for him to do on special teams. And they tried that a little bit today, but like 3 snaps worth. So maybe they try a little bit more of that during the preseason game, but Kennedy's a really tough call for me. Where are your thoughts on him?
I talked about it on our main podcast that we do every Sunday night. I think that Tom Kennedy has made about as best a case as he can to make this roster. Like, I don't think that you could really ask for anybody to perform any better in terms of in training camp, in preseason games. I'm inclined to align myself with your thinking as well, in the sense that he is kind of buried as the slot receiver. He's behind a couple of guys right now, but I don't know, like none of these other guys have really stood out. So I think it ends up being one of those instances in which you say, this guy has played, he's shown up, he's shown out, he's done what he's needed to do. We'll figure it out from there.
Yeah.
Like, we'll figure out a way to put him on the field.
Yep.
If things come to that, he's depth for us. Maybe he can develop into some other realm of special teams, whether or not they put him on like punt coverage or kick coverage or something like that. Like, I'm sure this guy is just dying to be on an NFL roster, though. Yeah. You know what I mean? So a guy who's buried that deep on the depth chart, he has to be ready and willing to do anything to kind of realize that dream. So, I mean, I'm really rooting for the guy. I really hope that Tom Kennedy ends up doing something to, take himself off this roster bubble. But you look around the rest of the room, Jeremy, Victor Bolden has just been terribly inconsistent, right? And I mean, it seems like that was the guy that, if you want to talk about camp darlings before Tom Kennedy, he was the guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, talk about how the tides have turned. But, Javon McKinley hasn't, I mean, he makes 1 catch in the 4th down for a touchdown.
Right.
I mean, Geronimo Allison, like Sage Surratt, are any of these guys eliciting any confidence in you?
No.
I mean, Tom Kennedy's got to be the name that you point to and say, that guy's worked his ass off, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's at worst wide receiver 6. There's no question to me about it. And so if the Lions keep 6, he's in. If they keep 5, I just don't I'm starting to lean putting Tom Kennedy in. The problem is that means either you're taking Quintez Cephas or Brashad Perriman out, which means suddenly you've got a big issue on the outside, because then you only have Tyrell Williams and whoever you don't cut between Brashad Perriman and Quintez Cephas, and that's really it. Like Khalif Raymond, I know he's been getting a lot of reps on the outside. Maybe he is wide receiver 2 on the outside, but he's better in the slot. Amon-Ra St. Brown, better in the slot. Quintez Cephas might even be better in the slot. So you're leaving yourself really short-handed. But like you said, like this team has talked, and the way Dan Campbell talks about Tom Kennedy, it really seems like they are going to find something to do. It's their job as coaches, right? If a guy is showing you he can make plays, it's your job as a coach to put him on the field. Who I think it was Aaron Glenn or Aubrey Pleasant who said something like, listen, if you're good And he was talking about, young players and getting young players playing time. Tom Kennedy's relatively young, 25, I think. If you're good, we got to get you out there. We're going to make room for you. We're going to find a way to get you in there. And so I'm starting to think that's the plan with Tom Kennedy, and I don't know if that means keeping a 6 wide receiver or kicking a guy like Brashad Perriman to the curb because, listen, I know I just got done saying, like, that leaves you perilously thin at wide receiver on the outside, but if Brashad Perriman isn't making plays for you on the outside, he's not really adding any depth there.
Right, then what is he adding?
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Totally.
If I had to pick right now, I have Tom Kennedy in. I do. And I know that's changed from Monday, but just hearing some of the things that Dan Campbell said and just continuing to see Tom Kennedy in camp while Brashad Perriman did not take advantage of a big weekend for him, I think Tom Kennedy has worked his way maybe onto the right side of the bubble.
I think either that's the duo or maybe even trio of camp darlings, preseason darlings that everybody's looking forward to on Friday is going to be a trio of David Blau, Tom Kennedy, and Craig Reynolds all lining up on offense, and that would make everybody's preseason hearts grow three times larger for sure. Tight end.
Yeah.
Nope. I mean, we're not looking at any TJ Hawkinson. Probably. How much Darren Fells do you think we're gonna get?
I think we might not get any. I think we literally might be riding 2 tight ends the entire game, and that's Alize Mack and Brock Wright, 2 guys who are just like the lone men standing by default because everyone either got injured, went in a car accident, or just got cut. Like it's not a great group. And we talked about this on the podcast. I'm starting to think tight end 3 is just not on the roster at this point. But there's probably a good chance the original 53 is going to, have one of these guys. And again, it might come down to special teams, but I'd love to see one of these guys make a play or make a block.
I don't care about tight end 3 at this point. Like I'm right there with you. Like I would be really disappointed if either of these guys ended up making the 53 roster and sticking with it.
Yeah.
Like they have done nothing to, they've done nothing to earn it or to really, make me think, yeah, I want that guy out there because, as you've talked about all throughout training camp, Jeremy, that tight end 3 guy has to be able to do
both
everything.
jobs.
He has to be able to block. He has to be, he has to be a threat in the receiving game because that's kind of how things are laid out right now. Like, yes, Hawkinson is kind of that old mold inline tight end who can block and who can go out there and catch passes. But, and Darren Fells, even that to a little bit of an extent. Like, he's more of a blocker than he is a receiver, but he can be a red zone threat. He can do some things. That tight end 3 has to be able to, he has to do everything in case any of these guys get hurt. So, I'm whatever. Tight end 3, whatever. Like, that's my analysis. Whatever. Who cares?
That's fine. Let's move on to the offensive line then. Usually teams keep somewhere between 8 and 10, so let's count down the guys that are safe. We got Taylor Decker 1, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, Halapuli Vaitai, Penei Sewell, Tyrell Crosby I'm going to call safe. Matt Nelson I'm going to say is probably safe, so we're at 7 there. Do we want to call Evan Brown safe because he played center all of last preseason game and there isn't another backup center on the roster right now? Is that fair?
It seems that's the way things are trending, right? Like it seems like they're going to keep like a backup center, not like one of those like backup I play guard, I play center guys.
Right. And the only other possible thing there at center is Evan Heim, who has been repping this entire week at center. And we thought maybe we'd see that in last preseason game. I think we're almost certainly going to see him at center this game. So it's a potential way to win a roster spot, but considering he just moved to that spot last week, I think it's kind of a long shot. Maybe that's more of a practice squad thing. So then you're left with maybe 1 or 2 spots between Logan Stenberg, Tommy Kramer, Darren Paulo, Dan Skipper. And Dan Skipper has been decent at tackle in the past. He's been on the team for a long time. Logan Stenberg is obviously a project that you were hoping was going to work out. Had one good preseason game, one kind of bad preseason game. How do you see that sort of thing playing out on Friday night?
I think when you look at it with Sewell and Nelson and Decker and Crosby, like right now it kind of, I mean, we haven't heard anything in regards to like, trade talks or anything like that with Tyrell Crosby. So
and he's kind of back to practice. So
right. So that's another good indication that they're probably just going to have him on the roster this year. So unless that makes any, unless there's any drastic changes to that, like that's 4 tackles. Like I can't see them making room for Dan Skipper on top of that. The one thing that we probably will not see in preseason game 3 is Logan Stenberg play center at all.
I hope not.
Um, yeah, that would be to everybody's benefit. I'm leaning Stenberg. I'm leaning
Yeah.
Stenberg for that final spot. Just because it's guard. I know, right now I think that, we just kind of laid it out, but Vaitai, Jackson, um, and then like from there, like you don't really have a whole lot of depth at guard. So I
No.
feel like Stenberg just makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially if you're gonna keep a guy like Evan Brown who is the center. Like
Right.
that's what he does. He plays center. Maybe he can play guard in a pinch.
Sure.
Who knows?
And I mean,
But
another thing to keep in mind is they've been cross training a lot of these backup tackles at guard all training camp. So, don't be surprised if the Lions are in a pinch that they move Matt Nelson to guard.
or even Tyrell Crosby.
Yeah. Yeah. He's been doing a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I know that Eric Schlitt would absolutely just. Uh, this is a PG podcast, but kind of it is. I feel like it is when we're doing it. Dan Skipper is 6'10".
Yeah. He's tall.
Like that guy can't play guard.
No. No. Nope.
Yeah.
No.
So I think
Yeah,
I think
that lack of versatility is probably going to matter.
that's probably gonna hurt him
Yeah.
when it comes to final cuts. So yeah, do you think it's gonna be Stenberg if you were a
I
betting man?
do. I think Tommy Kramer is a guy that we've overlooked a little bit, but Stenberg had the one really good game. Pass protection is still a really big issue with him, but I do think this team is going to want to run, and his kind of Mauler mentality and ability to run block in a pretty efficient way, I think is going to really appeal to this team. And I wouldn't say his job is safe going into the final game, but I think he's going in on the right side of the bubble.
Right, and virtually anybody can go on the practice squad now these days.
Sure,
But
literally everybody, anybody.
yeah. So, but Kramer seems like he's a guy that the Lions could sneak on there and stash.
Yeah, I mean, do any of these really reserve offensive linemen? I don't think any of them are getting picked up on waivers. I know offensive line is a very, it's a coveted position that doesn't have a lot of talent there, especially in second string. But we've all seen the backups this preseason. I don't think any of these guys are I don't think anyone is ready to pounce on one of these guys. So I think
Hey, who knows? I mean, Cleveland could come calling for Logan Stenberg. The Patriots could come calling for Logan Stenberg. Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia they're in orbit, man. They exist.
Speaking of which, we have a guy to talk about on the defensive side of the ball that might be trade talks right before the Lions potentially cut him. We'll see who we're talking about when we come back on First Bite and talk about the defense for the final preseason game. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Gee, I wonder who that could be, guys.
Oh, what a tease. I really need to listen to the other side of the break for that.
Oh, why isn't my chat box working? Oh, is it working now? Oh, it is working now. It's kind of tiny. No, not Akuda, not Tease Tabor. Good tries. Seeing Las Vegas trade with the Panthers to get linebacker Denzel Perryman, sitting here thinking it should have been Tavai. That literally just happened about 20 minutes ago, huh?
Oh,
right
okay.
before we went live or right after we went live? I mean, let's be honest. Like, what would Tavai even like? Conditional seventh, like that's the highest I would imagine.
Yeah,
because like everyone said like, oh well, the Patriots will trade for him. Like he wasn't good with us and on the Patriots defense. Why would Matt Patricia want him?
Well, because that Kyle Van Noy guy.
That would make sense if Kyle Van Noy was in the Patriots defense in Detroit, but he wasn't.
You don't know what you're talking about, bro. What about? Because I know we'll barely talk about special teams. Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about special teams more than we give it credit in terms of kicking. But what would you say the odds are that the Lions make a move to get a kicker? And VJ, quit talking shit, man.
I saw
I
that.
know that's why Jeremy's smirking. I wake up every morning and I check my inbox, and Twitter has sent me nothing.
It's been
And
a
then
full
I
2 weeks
go,
now, huh?
it has, and I'm concerned. Why? Why is John Whitaker verified? And
He's in the
I'm
chat.
not.
Careful.
I don't give a shit.
What page did you link in your app? Do you have an answer to that?
My good ones.
Good. Kicker. Do they trade for a kicker? Was that the question?
Yeah, that was the question. What are the odds are that you think they trade for a kicker?
Not that good. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't think you're gonna find a guy that's just like great. Who are the ones that I know? There's been like a couple that have ran through the trade rumors. Can someone
Ryan Santos.
Santoso is one of them. But I mean, like, he's got Bear stench on him. That's scary. Do you really want a former Bears kicker? Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of Vinny Pinheiro. That's who I'm thinking of. He definitely has Bears stench on him. But I know, like, he's been really good in preseason, and I think even in the season with the Bears, like, he was like 83% and he finished 9 for 9 in the last 5 games or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. Kickers are just so temperamental, man. It's such a mental thing that, like, bringing in a new guy right before the beginning of the season, that's scary to me, because you're such a mental position and you're putting a new guy on a new team with a new long snapper, a new holder, a new stadium to kick in. Like, all those factors are new to who you're bringing in, and that you don't want to mess with that with a kicker. So part of me is just like, let's just ride and die with Randy Bullock and accept that we're going to miss about, 1 out of every 4 kicks. It's going to suck, but sorry, like, that's what you signed up for when you let Prater walk.
You've said everything that I could say about the kicking battle. So maybe we need to have Chris slice this up a little bit and put this at the end of the podcast. Also, yeah, Harry. Harry did have a tweet that almost got to 1 million likes, and it was a really good tweet. I can't remember it.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, right.
I don't, actually.
You're saying that just to be mean.
I wish I was, but no. I'm just forgetful. What alerts? What about? Oh, yeah, let me catch up on alerts. It's weird because yours doesn't show up in my mini feed. I only have Katie who subscribed for 11 months right before we went live, as did D-Man for 9 months. And then I got the one bit from Captain James Kirk that says, "Tavai for kicker?" Hey, ZA Stoner, thank you for the follow. But I know if I scroll back up on my chat feed, we did have Buckethead. What is it? Buckethead Nick for two months. Love seeing you come back that second month. It's always a tell when you come back for that second month, because sometimes maybe you get the first month gifted to you, but if you come back for a second month, I know you like it here, and I appreciate that. But Nick, Buckethead Nick is your burner. So you've now subscribed under 2 accounts. Nick is at 29 months subscribed to the channel.
Skip the alerts. Who cares? None of this matters. Dump it. It's trash. Uncle Indigo, maybe I'll have to take that advice. In order to get verified on Twitter, you have to send a Twitter support a nude while holding a piece of paper with your Twitter name.
I think that's something else. That's Reddit. I mean, I think it's Reddit.
You mean that's the start of my OnlyFans account?
They're allowing adult stuff again, right? Like, that was a thing for a while.
Yeah, they pulled a 180 because they realized that they would lose their entire clientele.
Hey, by the way, Ron of Wireless Zone saw your first time chat. It says, Jeremy and Ryan, the best Lions coverage out there next to Justin Rogers. I'll take it.
Next. Okay, but we're next to, but where are we at on the podium?
I mean, next. Oh, so you're saying, like,
Yeah.
He's not in the middle of us. Or is he in the
No.
middle of us and you're
Is
wondering
he in
who's
the
second
middle
and
of
who's
us?
third?
Oh no, I'm wondering how next to us is Justin Rogers.
Justin's great, by the way. Like,
Yeah, Justin's awesome.
I chat with him a lot during practices and stuff, and he's been very helpful to me personally, and also a really funny guy too.
He's been on the podcast, friend of the podcast.
Friend of the podcast. Erwin NCL, thank you for the 5 months as well. I want to make sure I don't miss that. And did I miss any other one? I think I'm caught up. He also says AJ Parker hype. We'll get to him. I promise you. We'll get to some AJ Parker love.
Should we make a POD OnlyFans account?
No. No. I think I also saw Dan asking me if I'm okay after losing my punting title.
Aww.
I am. It was actually a very exciting.
Sad faces in the chat. Sad faces in the chat. It's the end. It's the end of an era.
It was actually a kind of fierce competition because I went up there first. So like, all right, returning champ, you got to go first. Everyone gets 2 attempts. I kind of shanked my first one. Like, it was a line driver. I think it only went about 33 yards or something. And I'm like, shit, I think I lost this. And then we go through and, there are a couple good ones here and there, but nothing beyond 40, I don't think. I come back for my second attempt and I crush it. And, crush it. It goes 45 yards, mostly in the air. Like, I didn't get much of a roll there. And then, like, 2 people later, Burkett goes up and hits a line drive that just rolls for days. And it goes 48 yards. I'm like, shit. That's how I'm going to go out to just this lucky roll. And then Will Birchfield of 97 won the ticket, and he's also on Fox 2 a lot. He's got a leg, man. That dude is I hear stories. He's a very athletic guy. He does some hockey stuff, I think, with some media people as well, but he earned it, and now I don't feel so bad. If I would have lost to Burkett on that one, I would have felt bad, but Berkey's got a leg, and I don't feel too bad about it.
If you would have lost to Burkett, I definitely would have like DoorDash you some sushi rolls, and I would have called them Burkett rolls.
So this happened at the Lions facility. It happened 2 years ago. We just kind of did it on a whim. I think it was probably Rogers or Mikey was just like, "Hey, can we punt the balls after practice one time just to see who can do it the farthest?" We were having kind of a bet, and for whatever reason, we didn't do it last year, probably because of COVID and stuff like that. So this year we wanted to do it on the last day of camp. We did, and it was a good time. Unfortunately, guys, like competitors like Ben Raven of M Live, Kyle Meinke, they skipped the end of practice. We didn't really announce we were going to do it until the end of practice, and they bounced quick, so they didn't get to compete. So, but if you guys are wondering how any particular beat writer did, I will spill. I'll spill tea. I don't care. You need PODcast socks? I have a hole in one of mine. Did we sell socks? Or are you just saying you only have one pair of socks, so you need podcast socks? Is that what's happening?
I think we should make socks.
Do we need to start selling socks? Does Raven have COVID? I don't think so. He was at practice today, unless he tweeted something about it today. Is that a joke? By the way, AgeArm19, thank you for the 5 months. Isn't Burkett a volleyball player? No, he's a basketball player.
That's what you're thinking of Risden.
Risden is a volleyballer.
He does. Lord Goop only owns one pair of socks.
All right.
Who had the worst kick, Jeremy?
I think it was a Fox 2 cameraman. I think his name's Kevin. I feel bad. If I saw him face to face, I would know his name. Kevin doesn't sound right. No, Eric and Risden were not at practice today.
All right,
Jeff.
LJ,
His name's Jeff.
Jeff Risden. Yeah.
No. The cameraman. His name is Jeff.
Oh, Jeff.
I don't know why I said
Jeff.
Kevin. I was teasing Rothstein on Twitter today because he definitely had the worst kick 2 years ago, but now he's on the Falcons beat. I have video of everyone's kick from 2 years ago, including my own.
Ooh. Did you click on the LJ image?
No, should I?
Yeah, I laughed.
Well, so click. That's how I see Jeremy and Ryan after hearing the J. Raj comparison. Hold on. I love this meme. This is one of my favorite memes.
No, it definitely is one of my favorite memes too.
It's very good.
Because if I ever won a third place medal in anything, I would act the same way.
Wow, there's a lot of Jeffs. Jeff Risden, Jeff the cameraman. A bad person, so I don't know his last name, and Jeff Apex Predator Jeff.
There's Jeff Bridges. There's Jeff Hardy. There's lots of Jeffs out there.
I think you got them all actually. That's every single Jeff.
The reason I wrapped up with Jeff Hardy is because I ran out of Jeffs to talk about.
See, your mistake is you didn't go to Geoffs. Geoffs.
Oh, Jeff Goldblum too. But yeah, you're probably right. Geoff Schwartz, yeah.
Geoff Schwartz. Oh shoot, Okuda. Whoops, we probably should have gotten that one.
I know him as Hefe.
I mean, we're about to talk about cut, so maybe we'll talk about Jeff Okuda a little more.
Oh, I guess we're not Michigan people either. Totally missed Jeff Daniels.
Whatever. Daniels is over.
Okay, no. Speaking of whatever, Apex Predator, Jeff Gordon, really?
They call me Jeff Gordon. That's a Nelly reference.
That is a Nelly reference. You people that Black SS with the navigation.
It's true.
Okay. Now everybody's just going off with Jeffs in the chat, and I'm ready for segment 2.
Really quick, because Kuzno brought it up. He says, been watching Hard Knocks. I hate McCarthy. They aren't making the playoffs. I have been watching Hard Knocks, and I can't get into it at all because I hate the Cowboys so much. Like they did like the drone shot that went viral yesterday was undeniably cool. But it also what a ridiculous facility that is. And
it's dumb.
I don't know, Jerry Jones just kind of represents everything I don't like about a lot of things. And I mean, I don't want to get socio-political and stuff, but just ridiculous riches, old guy who meddles too much and probably doesn't really know what he's doing outside of marketing. He's a great marketer, he's a great showman, but in terms of sporting a good football team, what does that franchise have to show for them in the past 5 years? Not much more than the Lions.
And curiously enough, you're betting on Dak Prescott this year.
Who still has he returned to full practice yet? Is that happened?
I think so. I think that they're talking about he's going to be ready for week 1.
Dak Prescott is the only thing about that team I like. I don't like I can't even think the running back's name. Jesus, I'm losing my mind. Ezekiel Elliott? I don't like Ezekiel Elliott. I certainly don't like Micah Parsons, who's a big storyline this year. I don't like the team. I don't like the team at all.
CEO entrepreneur, born in 1964, Jeffrey Bezos. I did that just so that Troy Barnes would continue to have it stuck in his head.
Some of the Lions beat was talking about how this team just has to have Hard Knocks next year, the Lions, because it would be good, and they're certainly going to most likely to be eligible next year. Dan wants us to talk about the Stafford article before we go back into things. Have you read it? And do you want to talk about it?
I have not read it. I've only seen the picture of him in the smiley face sweater, which was so off-putting that I didn't want to read the article.
I
Can
went,
you sum it up for me?
uh, it didn't really tell us anything new. It was Matthew Stafford. It was basically Seth Wickersham being like, "Wow, Matthew Stafford sure won't tell me anything," which is like, "Yep, yeah, enjoy that.
Yeah.
He's really good at that." But it gave a little more details in the weekend in Cabo and told him how Stafford didn't say it, but Wickersham said that Stafford definitively did not want to go to Carolina, so the Lions did him a solid and sent him to Los Angeles, which I think some people, might look back on as a mistake for the Lions doing him a favor, but given all the PR hits this team seems to take when a player is leaving, I think they got a pretty darn good deal out of LA. And even though they could have gotten Penei Sewell and Justin Fields if they had traded with Carolina, I think there's a pretty good path to success with the haul that they got, as long as they don't screw up the picks.
Yeah, and I mean that just goes for every NFL franchise ever.
Yeah.
Like, if you do good at drafting, you do good at football.
Right.
So,
But yeah, I don't know. Like, it was just Stafford being a Stafford. Like, at times he was funny and silly, and most times he wasn't really saying anything about football. Like, I tweeted my favorite line, which is just like, if you do, win the Super Bowl, what are you gonna do? Like, with all this attention? And he said, I'm gonna throw my phone in the fucking ocean.
I there was a quote that I did see floating around on Twitter. Did Stafford say something about big games?
Like, he wants to, like, that's one of his big motivations. He wants to play in big games. Which,
I hope he doesn't mean that he didn't play in any big games here, because he definitely had opportunities. He played in big games, and he.
Yes,
I mean,
and no.
I go back and I think of like the Week 17s against
True.
the Packers with
But there was like
the division on the line.
2 in 12 years.
Yeah, I mean, there was the Cowboys game, there was the Saints
Sure.
game, there was the Seahawks game. He was injured in that game, so I don't really hold that against him. But, I let me say, like, my overall point is, yeah, Stafford, like, a quarterback of his talent on a different team, plays in a lot more big games than he has with the Lions teams that he's played with, in terms of like their defense and other areas of the game. But he certainly did have he had some chances to show up.
Sure. But I think, like, I think at one point Wickersham asked him, like, how many primetime games did you play in your career, not including Thanksgiving games? And he didn't rattle them off. He's like, not many. He's like, you're getting 5 this year with the Rams. Buckle up, buckaroo. He didn't say that. That was that'd be a weird thing to say to Matthew Stafford.
Is there a quote where he says, "I have triples of the Nova, I have triples of the Roadrunner,
Yes,
I have triples of the Barracuda"?
Hold on. Yep. Okay. This is good news. Triples of Barracuda now.
And I don't live in a hotel.
That's like the last line of the skit, right?
Yeah, it's like one of the last things that he like slips in there.
What percentage of people watching right now, out of the 114 people, know what the hell we're even talking about right now? Like, it's got to be no more than 20, right?
I feel like, all right, so here's one of the highlights of my bachelor party.
Oh yeah, we haven't gotten any bachelor party stories.
They had a huge TV in the living room. Which this house was a labyrinth. Like, you went in there and there were rooms scattered all over the place. Like, there were tiny hallways and then big hallways. It was a weird house. Like, it was clearly built and then like added on, like, additions and things like that. And it's in the middle of a cornfield in Indiana too, so that was weird. But we're all in the living room, and I had control of the Netflix remote, and I just turned on "I Think You Should Leave," and everybody is just in the living room, like, rolling on the floor, like tears are coming down people's faces who had not seen season 2 yet.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, like, Coffin Flop came on, and like it was just over. Like, like Coffin Flop was a wrap. Yeah, I mean, Sloppy Steaks was a good one. Sloppy Steaks you have to appreciate for like the way it slow burns.
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of those like it's one of those outro skits, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the court the court stenographer. Um, that's great. Yeah,
Have
that was one of the highlights.
you haven't done a sloppy steak yet, right? Like that. You haven't gone that far.
We were going out for Mexican food, and I was like, we should do sloppy fajitas.
No.
But no,
Okay.
yeah.
RC Vader, thank you for the 7 months. He says, I'm already ready for my Barnes jersey. I won't be there with you, but in spirit, I would be. I do love. I I own more linebacker jerseys than any other position, and unfortunately, they are of DeAndre Levy and of Jared Davis. So won't be buying a Derek Barnes for that reason.
And can I quickly share what my linebacker jersey purchases were?
Sure.
Boss Bailey and Teddy Lehman.
This cursed franchise, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yikes.
Hey,
Michael,
Jared,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I'm I'm worried that your baby thinks that people can't change. I'm gonna say that to either people with babies or people with dogs. Like if they like bark or do anything, I'm gonna be like, I'm worried that your dog thinks I'm a piece of shit.
I no, I actually did have an Ernie Sims jersey as well. I don't believe I still have it. But yeah. Michael T. Dunn, thank you for the 6 months. Subscribe to the channel, halfway to a year already. You want a golf jersey? I mean, listen. If you want something that's only relevant for a year or two, not gonna hate on you for that.
Jeremy, what if I get you a Los Angeles Rams Matthew Stafford jersey? Will it curse him?
I don't know. I don't know.
I kind of want to. I kind of want to see what
You
happens.
kind of want to try, see what happens. The question
Not
is,
to curse them because it'll probably be the inverse. Like it's probably like 17-0 Rams to the Super Bowl, and I'm just like, oh, okay, cool.
I had a Harrington jersey as well. So Harrington and Stafford are the two quarterbacks I've ever owned. What else have I owned? Is that it? Have I only owned quarterbacks and linebackers? Guess I've never really thought about this. No, I had a Delmas jersey.
Okay, I was gonna say I'm shocked that you never had a Glover Quinn jersey because I feel like he might be like in your top 5 favorite Lions of all time.
Boom, signed picture says my name. I think there it is.
It does. When did you get that?
When he was doing his YouTube show for a while, like he was doing a thing where it's like if you sent in a question and he liked it and used it, he would send you a signed photo.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. And then his YouTube show lasted like 3 months because he ran out of Lions to shit talk this franchise. That's not true. He didn't. He actually strayed away from those topics. All right, we should get back to it because we're almost an hour in and we've only done 20 minutes of podcast content. So let me get back to the recording booth layout here. Pull up my roster. I know someone said they wanted to do a 53-man roster build. Maybe that's something we do over the weekend. It's going to be tough because we don't know when cuts are going to come in, right? Like after the game on Friday, they could start on Saturday. They could do it on Sunday. They might wait all the way till Tuesday. So
maybe it could be a green room thing. Maybe
that'd be in a different format of green room since we normally just take questions, but they would just be listening to us build a roster.
Yeah.
And part of it, I mean, it's hard to build a roster on the run too, because like you won't know you hit 53 until the end. So you might have to go back and fix things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Well, let me think on that.
I have an idea that I might pitch you
right now.
And no, not right now. I'll pitch it to you off air, and it'll be a way that we can involve the people.
Okay. Okay. We also might have to fit a Madden sim in tomorrow or maybe Friday morning. Morning sim? I don't know. Either way, we'll figure that all out. Make sure you're following us here on Twitch and got your notifications. If you download the app on your phone, you can get notified on your phone every time we go live. I got the Twitch app. It's dope because I use it to Chromecast it to my TV when I want to watch stuff on Twitch on my TV. Anyways, let's get back.
Go web, go.
And we are back here on our last first bite before the regular season? Question mark? Wow, I just said that out loud and it kind of shocked me, but it's true. We're talking about the last preseason games playing Friday night between Lions and the Colts and talking about basically all the jobs that are up for grabs. So let's move to defensive tackle, where it's maybe one of the most fascinating positions because it's maybe the only one in which the Lions might have to cut a guy that might catch on elsewhere because they are deep. We got Michael Brockers locked in. We got Aleem McNeil locked in. Deshaun Hand may be locked in, injured, but probably not season ending, so they're not going to put him on IR. Nick Williams, I would say, is pretty safe. Levi Onwuzurike is definitely safe. So we're already at 5 there. Now you have to question whether you're going to keep 6. I think I might put John Pennicini back in, and that would put me at 6. Then you're left with 2 guys, Kevin Strong and Bruce Hector, that are fighting for jobs and have done a hell of a job so far. So I don't know, Ryan, which one of those guys do you agree that all the guys that I said that were safe are safe? And do you think it's just kind of Kevin Strong and Bruce Hector fighting for a spot? Do you think Pennicini is in? He returned to practice this week after missing 2-3 weeks with an injury. What do you make of this position? It's confusing to me.
It is a little confusing. I see Bruce Hector as being somebody who could potentially fill that role of the second on the depth chart at nose tackle. Like I could see him potentially making. He's played there before.
Yeah.
It wouldn't exactly fit the mold, but he would have that positional versatility that I think he might be capable of doing that. So maybe that might sway the coaching staff. In addition to the really good play that he has had, since joining the team just a couple of weeks ago. So. Yeah. But man, it's so hard to keep Kevin Strong off this roster.
Yeah.
Like, that guy's been just one of the most consistent dudes, from the beginning of training camp through the preseason games. It'd be really disappointing to see him not latch on. But I agree with you in the sense that Brockers, McNeil, Onwuzurike, Nick Williams, unfortunately, I think those 4 guys are roster absolute locks. Would I be shocked if Deshaun Hand isn't on the 53? Yes. Would I be shocked if he is on the 53? No. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Deshaun Hand.
Well, I mean,
do you think it's a for sure thing, or does that injury kind of influence you?
Here's what I think has a good chance of happening. Deshaun Hand makes the initial 53, is immediately placed on IR, and then Bruce Hector comes back and takes a spot. I think something like that, or Kevin Strong, if one or the other doesn't make it. I think that has a really good chance of happening. Obviously, in order for that to happen, they have to pass through waivers and not get claimed, which is, a significant risk. But if you want to keep Deshaun Hand available for this year, you can't put him on IR before you cut down to 53. You put him on IR after you cut down to 53. You can bring him back in 3 weeks. Now, it's not the 8-week thing that it used to be. So
yeah, and with his groin injury being a little bit more serious, it seems like, than was initially believed, that might be the move.
I think it is. And the question is just how much do you believe that one or both of those guys can pass through waivers in Kevin Strong and Bruce Hector? Because I think that's the logical route to go. And if you lose out on a guy, you lose out on a guy. But you still have a really solid lineup in Brockers, McNeil, Hand, or Williams, Onwuzurike. That's a really solid lineup. So it would suck losing a guy like that. But you can't keep 8-7 interior defenders. You're just gonna have to let one of them go, and it's an unfortunate situation. But the problem is I just don't know if any of those guys can really win a spot on Friday because, listen, I had Pennicini out on my last bubble watch. I have him back in after today because he was first string defensive line, goal line today. Like he's back into it. I think the Lions like him a lot. I was concerned maybe the injury would put him lower on the depth chart. It doesn't look like it has. So I think Penasini's in, which means maybe Kevin Strong and Bruce Hector are out. And I don't know how they can fix that with the numbers battles. They're just too many good interior defenders.
Yeah. So it essentially boils down to that scenario, I think, Jeremy, where Deshaun Hand is clearly like one of the more talented players.
Yeah.
But it's just a guy who has really struggled to be healthy, and the greatest ability, as always, is availability. So, I don't know.
They might make the decision that we can't trust this guy to be healthy, and they could cut him. Like that's certainly an option. I don't think it's the route they go, and even Dan Campbell talked about him the other day, and when he talked about it, he almost sounded like I don't think he's going to be ready for week 1. Like that already seems to be assuming he's going to make the roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's move to edge here because I think again we're very interesting territory here because it's a numbers game again because Trey Flowers, Romeo Okwara, Julian Okwara, 3 locks. No question those 3 guys are in. Then the question is, do you keep 4 or 5? And if you keep 4, is it Charles Harris or Austin Bryant? If you keep 5, is it both of them? Rashad Berry probably not going to work his way onto the roster. But interesting note about Austin Bryant is that today Dan Campbell mentioned him specifically as one of the guys who kind of surprised him today. It surprised him throughout the entire camp, I should say. He came in injured, worked his way up, made a few plays in the preseason. Is he almost a lock at this point?
Maybe. I don't know. Like that scenario that you posed to me about, do you keep Austin Bryant or do you keep Charles Harris? I really would probably rather keep Austin Bryant at this point. Be younger, somebody who actually serves a purpose and can produce as a run defender, and isn't just like a situational pass rusher. Like I think the Lions have that in Julian Okwara, and obviously they have a younger, potentially more talented guy. I would rather see Julian Okwara out there instead of Charles Harris. So I would prefer Bryant to Harris.
Let me read you what Dan Campbell specifically said about Hunter Bryant today because it's not
Austin Bryant.
Did I say Hunter Bryant because someone in chat mentioned Hunter Bryant?
Yeah,
Austin Bryant. He said about Austin Bryant, but to watch him being here and get back on his feet under him and get the reps, get the load, he's been very impressive. I think this guy's really got a high ceiling and can continue to grow. I think he's even twitchier than I thought he was. That's it. I mean,
sounds like a guy they want to keep for the future.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Or at least see what they have. Like if that guy can live up to that ceiling that Dan Campbell sees with Austin Bryant. So yeah, I think you got your 5 guys. Trey Flowers, Romeo Okwara, Julian Okwara, Austin Bryant.
Maybe Charles Harris. All right, linebacker. In Jamie Collins, Alex Anzalone, Derek Barnes. I'm willing to also put Jalen Reeves-Maben as a lock in, which means you either have 1 or 0 spots left for Anthony Pittman, Jelani Tavai, Tavante Beckett. The question is, media, fans have all given up on Jelani Tavai. Have the Lions? And I don't know the answer there. I mean, they didn't make him one of the 5 cuts that they could have this week, which means it seems like they want to give him one more chance. But does he deserve a chance at this point? Does he have a realistic opportunity to change everyone's mind after we all saw with our own eyes what happened?
Yeah, and again, these are Dan Campbell's words, not mine, but like how big of an asshole would Dan Campbell be if he ends up cutting Jelani Tavai when he could have kept Don Muhlback another week and not cut him on his birthday? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, no, sorry, had to bring up Long Snapper Battle 2021. Here's the thing, is that I don't think a third preseason game is going to completely sway this coaching staff from what so clearly is already on tape in more than just 2 preseason games. Like they can look back and they can see like a heavier Jelani Tavai doing the same mistakes and lacking instincts and not being where he needs to be in pass coverage and missing tackles and all of that stuff is already on tape. I don't think a third preseason game sways them from him being a cut to him being on the roster.
I would hope not.
So you would hope not, right? And I think that if they keep him, it's an indication that like they either have plans for this guy or they think that they can do something with him. And maybe this roster is in a place where they can do something like that because it is so early in the rebuilding process. Like maybe you feel comfortable taking a chance on a guy like that because you think his ceiling is a little bit higher than another linebacker that's on the roster. But that's the only way I could see them rationalizing this. Like with the play that he has put out on the field in this preseason game or in these 2 preseason games, it seems like the Lions need to move on from the Jelani Tavai experience.
Yeah, the way I read the situation is like they're almost doing him a favor because he did everything they asked of him this offseason. Like he lost all the weight, he's learning a new position, he's doing this, he's doing that. And they're like, let's just ride this out. Let's give him an opportunity to. I mean, and maybe it's as simple as this. Maybe they're putting tape out there for other teams. Maybe they're like, let's give this guy one more opportunity to hopefully showcase himself to other teams and win a roster spot somewhere else. Because as much as I think we like to fantasize about Tavai potentially getting traded to one of the Patriots cast-off teams, he wasn't good under the Patriots defense either. Like I don't see that happening. I don't see why anyone.
And also he's slimmed down now.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, he'd have to put on the pounds. So yeah, I mean, let's just all agree Tavai is out and probably should be out, which means what do you do with that last spot? Is there a 5th spot? My latest projection that I just kind of have running in the background, I don't publish it, has only 4 linebackers, which means we're done. But Pittman and Beckett are guys that have flashed here and there. Devontae Beckett's an interesting case because he's a really small guy, like 220 pounds or something like that. Not bad on special teams, but super young. The thing about him is that Dan Campbell basically telegraphed today that he's aiming to put this guy in the practice squad. So I don't think he makes the 53. Anthony Pittman is a guy who's been around a couple of years. Also not bad at special teams. I think he has a lot on this line. I don't think he's necessarily got anyone. I don't think his competition is in the linebacker room. I think his competition is somewhere else. Maybe it's a 6th wide receiver. Maybe it's a 4th running back that he's competing against. I think if he has a good game on Friday, that maybe he rationalizes a 5th off-ball linebacker spot.
Yeah, and it's just a position, Jeremy, that we haven't really seen Anzalone and Jamie Collins play a whole lot. Yeah. Obviously, we saw them play in 1 preseason game, and it was 11 snaps. So, they're going to get plenty of opportunities. So if there's somebody to pop, like you said, there might be a position open for a 5th linebacker, depending on the rest of the roster construction. But like again, this is another one of those positions where, like running back, right? The starters aren't playing. Yeah. Tight end, the starters aren't playing at all. Like this is another one where the starters aren't going to be playing. Derek Barnes already has a spot. It's a battle almost between Jelani Tavai and Anthony Pittman.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. This is unrelated to that battle, but like, do you play Derek Barnes in this game? It seems like the primary goal of this game is to just figure out what you got, figure out those last 20% of the roster spots. But with your young guys, like there is also a potential to continue to develop. Like, wouldn't even shock me if Penei Sewell, going back to the offense, plays a little bit in this game because they want him to be ready for week 1. Do you get Derek Barnes some reps in this game just so that he continues to develop?
Yeah, I think so. I think that maybe you treat him the way that you treated him in game 1. Mm-hmm. Maybe he gets like between like 8 and 12 snaps.
But this time, like maybe at the beginning of the game, like you treat him almost like you would a starter in a preseason game. You like give him a series or 2 and then get them the hell off so he's okay.
I would hope that. So say we lived in almost this bizarro world where the starters were actually playing. I would want to see Derek Barnes play at the starters. Right. Like if the Colts first team offense was out there, and they could maybe shift out Alex Anzalone and they could put in Derek Barnes instead. Like, yeah, like I would hope that they would do something like that.
Yeah. All right, let's move to cornerbacks as we trudge along here. Okuda's in, Oruwarie's in, Mike Ford I'm gonna say is in. Melifonwu's in, and now I don't know. Like, I guess at this point, I guess AJ Parker is in. Like, the story of training camp. This guy comes out of nowhere and potentially wins the nickel job. I know it was either Aaron Glenn or Aubrey Pleasant said, like, don't give him the nickel job. He hasn't won it yet. But all signs point to AJ Parker at least making the roster, which really kind of muddles the situation because we all thought the nickel job was at first between Corn Elder and Mike Ford. Then they signed Nickel Roby-Coleman, and we thought he was going to jump in and take the job. So now now Ford's on the outside. You got Nickel Roby-Coleman and Corn Elder. Those guys are, I assume, going to be battling for a spot. You don't need a third string nickel, I don't think. And so I don't really know what the battle is there. Corn Elder is a guy who's been behind just due to an injury, but seems like he's back in the game. I think of maybe anyone on the roster. Maybe this is a bigger game for him than anybody else. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I could totally buy that. I mean, we've seen no Corn Elder at all whatsoever. So, that's a guy who's really playing for, I think, a roster spot at this point. And what about Bobby Price? We didn't mention his name.
Yeah, this is a guy who's been repping as the gunner, the first team gunner alongside Mike Ford every single rep this training camp. And that leads me to believe he's in. But he struggled a little bit. Like he hasn't taken to this transition to outside corner. He had a penalty on special teams during last preseason game. I feel like he's starting to slip, but at the same time, I haven't seen him slip from that spot, which leads me to believe special teams is going to get him in. But can you justify that? Can you justify giving a guy a roster spot when you got a guy like Jalen Reeves-Maben who's making the roster basically because of special teams? When you got a guy like CJ Moore, who we'll talk about in a second, who almost certainly is going to get a roster spot based on special. How many of these pure special teams guys are you going to give? Or do you see enough in Bobby Price developmental wise it makes you think, well, maybe he can develop into an outside corner?
Yeah, I think those are all great questions, Jeremy. I mean, you think about where the Lions are at cornerback, it's going to be a total youth movement, and you would hope that maybe they would keep some veterans back there, or that would be traditional thinking, right? And I think you covered it when Aaron Glenn had a great quote earlier in the week where he said, young guys are going to play if they're ready to play.
Yep.
Like you can't be afraid to put young players out on the field, and there's going to be young players out there on the field in Jeff Okudah and Amani Oruwariye. Beyond that, I think it's all a toss-up.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? I mean, Mike Ford was a guy who was repping at nickel cornerback.
Yep.
Maybe they might go that route. Maybe they might go the veteran route with Nickel Roby-Coleman. Maybe Corn Elder, once he gets healthy, is the guy that everybody thought was going to be the starting nickel cornerback heading into camp once he was signed.
Yeah.
And there's AJ Parker. Like, there's a bunch of different scenarios you can see playing themselves out. But the back end of this roster when it comes to cornerback depth is going to be something really to watch on Friday.
And one other interesting development that we saw at camp today with Jeff Okudah missing a couple of practices, who was the corner that slipped in? Fatu Melifonwu. So maybe it's possible he's cornerback 3 on the outside, which is crazy because I think a lot of us thought he might just kind of redshirt this year and not do anything. It's a good chance we might see him not only on Friday, but maybe during the regular season as well.
Not afraid to play the young guns.
Absolutely. And these guys, a guy like Fatu Melifonwu wasn't tainted by the Patricia regime, so maybe he's coming in with a little more confidence than some of the guys that are returning from that regime. Finally, we got safety. Saving this one for last. I don't think there's really much to talk about if I'm being completely honest. I think Tracy Walker, Will Harris, Dean Marlowe, CJ Moore, those are your 4. Jalen Elliott and Elijah Holder, prime, practice squad candidates. I don't think there's room for them on the roster. Jalen Elliott is a guy who's shown up at times in special teams, but again, we just went over 3 or 4 guys that might already win this roster based on special teams only. Anything I'm missing with the safeties, Ryan?
You're missing absolutely nothing, so let's just go back and say, how do we feel about Jerry Jacobs?
Oh, yeah, we skipped Jerry Jacobs, huh?
Yeah. I just
Uh,
noticed that.
yeah, I mean,
But he's just another guy in the mix,
it's
right?
another young
Like,
guy in the mix, and at times he flashed in camp. I think he peaked already, and that's not saying he peaked in his entire career. I think just we saw the best of him already, and it's kind of slowed down. You know, I saw him a little bit. I saw him mix in with I think the twos today in training camp. I just think it's too tall of a hill to climb in one preseason game, but I think he could win a spot on the practice squad with a good performance on Friday.
well, there you go. There's our talk of safeties, aka Jerry Jacobs and his shot at playing cornerback for the Detroit Lions in 2021. Do we need to talk about kicker battle 2021?
I don't know how you discuss the kicker battle. Both guys have been semi inconsistent in camp. I don't know if you make a decision solely based on one preseason game. Hopefully they get a chance to kick some damn field goals because last game they didn't. But yeah, I mean that'll kind of be curious to see if maybe the Lions lay up a little bit on drives and like, don't take knees or anything, but like what's more
Yeah.
important to this team right now, scoring a touchdown in a meaningless game or getting some actual like pressure kicks in a preseason game? I would say it's more important to kick some field goals.
Like if it's like 3rd and 4 and you're on the opponent's like 29-yard line, you're like, "Hey, David Blau,
Take
why don't you
drop
why,
it.
why don't you throw a deep ball? Throw a deep ball.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Like throw it up there. Like, hey, catch a touchdown. We love it.
I think maybe you'd ask Tim Boyle to do that because it'd be incomplete. Although maybe it'd be intercepted. You don't want that.
You don't want that if you want to kick. Or if Dan Campbell's like pulling on a ref, he's like, "Come on, throw a flag on something. Like we're really trying to kick a freaking field goal. We got a kicker battle here, man."
And we we're a little too close. We want to try like a 50-yarder. Can you just call the holding on this?
Yeah. Can you call intentional grounding on a pass that's so clearly not intentional
Right,
grounding?
a
So it's
screen
loss
pass
of down
to a running
yeah.
back who's right freaking there.
Yeah. So that sums up kicker battle, right?
I think it does.
Like it's just something where it's not going to be a decision that's made in one preseason game.
Yeah.
Like if Randy Bullock goes out there and misses a 38-yarder, but Zane Gonzalez makes a 48-yarder, like I don't think the coaching staff is like, "Well, Zane's the guy."
Yeah.
Like I think they probably know who their guy is at this point.
Yeah, I think you're probably, and I think it's probably Randy Bullock. He's just been a little bit more steadier. I know he missed a couple today, but it's just how it goes. And I don't think you're going to find a kicker that's perfect at this point. I know a lot of people are talking about trade markets and things like that, and I think it makes more sense to go with the guy that you've been with in the entire training camp, who's been snapping with the same guys and dealing with the same holders and used to the same Ford Field when he's had a couple kicks at Ford Field. So I think that's probably going to be your guy, but maybe something drastic happens on Friday.
Do you think the Lions brought in Zane Gonzalez at all to maybe try to light a fire under Randy Bullock, and maybe not light a fire, but be like, "Hey, like, you probably thought this was your job, but you're really not performing that well, so we'll bring in another guy who has starting experience."
Yeah, I mean, I think he was asked something similar about that, like having to win the job twice, right? Like you beat one guy out, but you got to beat the other guy, and his answer was just kind of a typical like, I'm competing every day, whether there's a guy here or not, so I'm treating every day like I'm in a competition. But yeah, like I think that makes sense. Obviously, most people want two kickers in training camp, anyways, just so that you're not tiring out a leg or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely puts pressure on him, whether that's the intention to or not.
Yeah. Well, speaking of putting pressure on things, preseason game 3 is going to be pretty pressure filled for a lot of these depth players on the Lions roster. Hey, for myself, Ryan Matthews at Ryan_POD, and for my co-host, Jeremy Reisman at Detroit on Lion, the esteemed editor-in-chief of this estate we have here, I bid you adieu.